Hello, this episode I want to talk about esports. Esports are already a huge phenomena, even though they may be invisible to many people. The total amount of revenue that's created and made by esports exceeds the combined revenue of many large major professional sports. And some of the prizes given away to the winners of esports championships can actually exceed the amounts given away for like the Indy 500 or the Golf Masters games. So these are very large institutions and phenomena even today, but they're going to get even bigger. And I want to talk about maybe some of the trends of where esports may go. First of all, where is all this money coming from? The money is mostly being supplied by brands. So brands, particularly brands that appeal to young males, are funding these games and these professional teams because they're sort of like really nothing cooler than to be associated with, the number one game player in the world. It's like athletes. They really want to be associated with that, so this is where a lot of this money is coming for these sports. And many of them already do have professional teams, and the teams themselves are being run as businesses to get some of that brand money. So they've been recent cases where they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase or to create a esports team. I'm going to define esports very broadly to mean playing video games, to playing any kind of electronic assisted game, to even games where there are robots and digitally controlled and even autonomously controlled robots playing. Because I think that broadly is a class that has a very blurry line between the divisions, and we can kind of include all these together into kind of like future electronically assisted sports. So the most common esports today are video games where people are being either playing in solo against each other, the best of an individual, or they're playing teams against each other. And some of these teams have gone professional, and they have spectators, so we can watch them in real time play these games. And we also, of course, can watch them playing in a streaming way, playing live from wherever we are, wherever they are. And that live streaming of games is a very large component of even how people learn to play the games better. There's this kind of a feedback loop going on where the more people that play, the more people can learn to play, and that can accelerate the quality of the playing very, very fast. And we will continue to see that kind of acceleration where people are watching to play, in part because they hope to partake of that kind of revenue that's going through. They want people to watch them, they're coaching, they're instructing others to learn how to play. And so the more money that flows into this system, the bigger and bigger it will get. But video games are just one aspect of it. There's going to be games where you're not just sitting in front of a controller, but you're using your entire body in VR or AR, the mirror world. This kind of online video gaming will much more resemble sports because it's going to use more of the body than just your fingertips or hands. And at that point, it'll become very easy to get injured, and it'll have all the qualities of a sport, even though you may have to don some gear to play it or even to watch it. And those kinds of games where you're playing in three-dimensional spaces will also bleed over into the augmented reality world, the mirror world, where you're playing in a real space, but you're playing a virtual game. Maybe you have implements, weapons, goals that are invisible unless you have the smart glasses on. And that's just, again, in the kind of games that we have already today, just extensions of those. But there's also, as I mentioned, the idea of other physical arenas, including drones. And so there's a whole gaming genre of first-person views inside the drone where you, a human, a team member, an athlete, are flying a drone. You're not racing a car that weighs a ton. You're flying a tiny drone that you could not fit into physically, but you can insert yourself with virtual reality, with a first-person goggles, and you're inside flying that plane, and you're racing them. So drone racing with an FPV, a first-person view, is another form of esports. And it's very popular, particularly among those trying to fly it, because you are flying your own plane. But you can also have people piggyback your view, so they can be seeing the same view that you have, first person, as you fly it. And of course, you can have other drones that are flying along just filming what's being done and what's being seen. And so that's another kind of a game that could also go professional and accumulate a lot of money, just as we have car racing, the big industries, Indy 500, the Formula One, where a lot of money flows through and there's lots of spectators, and it's a very big deal. And flying drones, or even flying autonomous cars, or not autonomous cars, but flying unmanned cars, is another potential esport. Then we come into something like BattleBots, where we have unmanned machines that are by themselves. These right now are currently being steered and driven by humans remotely, and they are basically trying to kill each other. There are two machines that are trying to destroy each other in a battle. And again, there could be one-to-one, but you could also make teams of this. You can make a team sport where you have a team of machines that are trying to fight each other. Right now, there's weight limits on things like BattleBots, but they eventually will keep upping that weight limit until we have them to be the size of cars. The problem then is it's almost too dangerous to physically see, and we have to kind of watch this remotely, because the amount of energy being released when these things hit each other can be really dangerous. So, but the spectacle of machines destroying other machines is very appealing, where no humans can be hurt. And this also will be a esport. And there'll even be views, again, of inside the machine, a first-person view, where you could be watching the sport from within a machine, within the driver viewpoint, and outside when necessary. So that's another potential avenue for this digitally assisted sports. There also can be, just as we can wear magic smart glasses to see things, we can also wear wearables in between, where a regular sport, a regular meaning a physical sport that humans are doing, a player can be equipped with so many wearables that what we're seeing or what we're measuring is their activity, which is replicated on a screen or in a VR, so we can be present. So we can kind of experience. Imagine we're having a soccer team, football team, and everybody is completely wearing wearables that capture every one of their moves. We could be then on that team alongside them in that kind of replicated VR version of that real sport. So the game is really being played on the field, but we are present in a way that we can't be just with a camera and a stance. And that, I think, would also kind of be included in an esports view, because it's really kind of digitally assisted spectating. The other thing that I think will enter into the world of sports and esports is going to be betting. Right now, the laws against that kept that out for a very long time are changing fairly quickly, and this betting component will become a larger and larger component of the amount of money flowing through, because it'll be a lot easier to bet on teams one way or the other. And so that kind of a secondary aspect of it will increase, again, the size and the amount of money, which also just increases the speed and the magnitude at which these happen. And that also suggests another very crucial aspect of some of these games, which is that in some of these sports, the difference between a game and sport is very, very thin. But some of the games and sports will have an element of economic virtual economies built into them, not just for betting, but for other reasons. So people can learn to play, or even will play at a low level, to earn money. It's like capture the flight, to find things, on a race to get something and get paid while they're doing it. And it's fairly easy using blockchain technologies and other crypto assets to embed into these virtual worlds monetary rewards that can be bought and sold reliably. And that means that you could kind of embed commerce into a sports and a game in a way that you can't do in real life. And additionally, the way that we make virtual games with the kind of, they call them rotisserie leagues, fantasy football, fantasy baseball, all these new esports will very easily have fantasy versions of them, where you can kind of assemble your own virtual team from actual players, and using their statistics and their metrics, you can make your own team. You can play against other people who are playing with the same kind of a fantasy ensemble. And that virtual aspect, that kind of shadow games, shadow teams that are playing against each other, again, contribute to the total volume of attention and money that is going into this larger esports arena. And the more that's put into it, the more that's derived, the more that's earned, the bigger the scene will be. So I think it's very, very likely that within the next couple of Olympics, in the next decade or so, there will be some esports that will qualify, or that will be part of the Olympics, even if it's at the demonstration level, that, you know, the athletic necessity of these gamers, even today, the ones playing video games, their abilities to maneuver their hands, their dexterity is athletic, and that will move into the Olympics, and that's another thing that will help drive this in its growth. And so we shouldn't be surprised to see, maybe not in Paris in 2024, but the one after that, one esports to be in the Olympics. So I think that by that time, we may even drop the idea of esports. It just may be considered sports. It would just be there'll be another whole field of sports that may not even have the name E. We may just drop it, and it's just another kind of sport, like the extreme sports were, you know, snowboarding, and now they're just another sport. So the real future for esports is that we're going to drop the E, and they'll just be considered sports. So that's what I think esports are going to. I think they're going to become bigger and bigger, and maybe the biggest sports of all, much bigger than the traditional ones, and then we'll eventually lose that moniker, and it'll just be sports.